Crips even came to kill me and DJ Quik at a funeral in Inglewood. The Compton Crips and the Compton Pyrus were not playing.
If you were rolling with the Bloods or the Crips back then, you were basically walking around with a target on your back. That era was wild. The streets were lawless, and even big names in hip-hop couldn't escape the madness.
The Compton Crips and the Compton Pyrus were not playing. And it doesn't take much to get...
DJ Quik was one of those caught right in the middle of it all, face to face with death, trapped inside the deadliest gang wars Compton had ever seen. Bodies were dropping non-stop, and Quik's life nearly got taken in one of the most shocking ways imaginable. His longtime manager, Stan Shepard, later exposed just how close Quik came to being erased from the game forever. And the craziest part, it didn't happen on the block or in some back alley, it went down at a funeral.
Remember, the Crips even came to kill me and DJ Quik at a funeral in Inglewood.
A place meant for peace and mourning turned into the backdrop for a cold-blooded assassination attempt. According to Stan, Crips slipped into the crowd dressed like they were just there to pay respects. But the truth? They were plotting to take out both him and DJ Quik right there in front of everybody. Stan didn't sugarcoat it either.
And they pulled up to me and Crawford, and they thought Crawford, High C, was Quik. When they saw it wasn't, they moved a little bit to the side, and then other cars were coming through. And so everybody in the church was running out. There was gunfire everywhere.
He said straight up, the Crips came to kill me and DJ Quik at a funeral. Things got messy real quick. Rapper High C was there, and the shooters actually thought he was Quik at first. That mix-up set off a chain reaction that turned deadly. Once the killers realized they had the wrong man, chaos exploded. Gunfire ripping through the crowd, innocent people diving for cover, and pure panic breaking loose in a place meant for silence and respect. But the most devastating blow, Quik's girlfriend at the time was murdered in the spray of bullets.
So close to me that I had to redirect my life. I got paranoid. I was completely paranoid. Every time I would leave anywhere, it destroyed everything in my life.
That loss crushed him in ways words can't explain. Stan admitted the pain carved deep scars in Quik's mind, leaving him with PTSD, endless nightmares, and paranoia that never left. That moment was more than just a scare. It flipped DJ Quik's whole world upside down. He admitted the paranoia never left him.
The Compton Crips and the Compton Pyrus were not playing. These people will kill you, and it doesn't take much to get you clipped.
Living surrounded by death and constant threats forced him to change forever. The man who walked into that funeral wasn't the same man who walked out. Stan Shepard made sure people understood just how dark those days were. He said flat out, Compton gang politics were ruthless.
That have come to me with $500 to ask me for $500 to kill somebody that I was having a problem with.
And when he said not playing, he meant it literally. A wrong word, a wrong look, and you could end up dead. Stan even exposed how casual the streets had gotten with human life. People used to come up to him like it was business, saying they could handle anybody he had a problem with, all for just $500. Imagine that, a human life traded for the price of a weekend shopping spree. That's how cheap, how cold-blooded, and how scary it was. But to understand how a funeral could turn into a massacre, you gotta know the city that built this chaos. Compton wasn't always the concrete jungle we think of now. Back in the 1950s, it was calm, mostly white, filled with quiet suburbs and farmland where families raised kids with picket fences and backyards. One of its founders, Griffith Dickinson Compton, even made sure Richland Farms was preserved so agriculture would always be part of the city's soul. But history had other plans. The so-called white flight hit, with white families leaving as black families moved in. Many pushed out of other LA neighborhoods by racist housing rules. By the late 1960s, Compton had been transformed completely. Then came the Watts Rebellion in 1965, just miles away, and that was the final spark that changed everything. The peaceful farmland dream collapsed, replaced with hardened streets, gangs on every corner, poverty running deep, and survival becoming the only way of life. By the time the 1980s came around, Compton wasn't just another tough neighborhood, it was branded with a new identity, one that would haunt it for decades. The murder capital of the United States. And this wasn't just some nickname cooked up for headlines. The stats backed it up. By 1990, the murder rate exploded to nearly 91 killings for every 100,000 people, turning the city into a battlefield where blood painted the pavement daily. South Central LA had its struggles, no doubt, but Compton was operating on another frequency of chaos. Mob James himself said it straight. People were dropping like flies, and he was catching death threats constantly. Nobody was safe. It wasn't just gang members ducking bullets. Regular, hard-working people were living under the same deadly shadow. A teacher, a student, a mom walking home, none of that mattered. Stray bullets didn't ask for your name or your set. Drive-bys could erase anyone in seconds. Everyday life was drenched in fear. Kids couldn't just play outside without gunshots ringing out, and mothers went to sleep terrified that tomorrow they might be forced to bury their sons.
We look at the first layer of victims, the bystanders, the people caught in the crossfire.
Oh man, it ain't nobody gonna bring her back. It ain't nobody.
That's how heavy the city's burden was. Then the crack epidemic exploded in the early 80s, and what was already bad turned absolutely catastrophic. Figures like Freeway Rick Ross funneled crack into neighborhoods like gasoline on a fire, and overnight gangs weren't just crews fighting for respect anymore. They were full-blown drug empires. With the money pouring in, firepower followed, and not just little handguns. We're talking MAC-10s, Uzis, and AKs. Suddenly the streets were armed like war zones, and the escalation was brutal. But the deadliest twist of all, the very people who were supposed to protect the community, the Compton Police Department, had their own dark reputation that made everything even worse. The streets were already deadly, but there was another fear lurking, the Jump Out Boys. These cops would roll up out of nowhere, harassing residents, roughing people up without hesitation. And the corruption ran so deep that by the year 2000, the entire Compton Police Department was straight up disbanded. Think about that. A whole police force shut down and replaced by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department because the system was that broken? Sure, there were attempts to patch things up. Programs like Gifts for Guns managed to pull thousands of weapons off the street. But in reality, it was nothing more than a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. The violence didn't slow down. It kept raging. And right in the middle of it all stood the Bloods and the Crips. Two colors, red and blue, that completely reshaped Compton's identity. The Crips had their roots in the early 1970s, founded by Raymond Washington and Stanley Tookie Williams.
Why are you guys Bloods? Why are you in the gangs?
Why is we in the gang? I guess because the area we grew up in, man. Everybody go in that area, man. Everybody follow the same line.
At first, it was pitched as a brotherhood, protection for the community. But that protection quickly flipped into domination, with Tookie himself ruling through fear and terror. The Bloods weren't born out of unity with them. They came as resistance. The Piru Street Boys were tired of getting pressed, jumped, and brutalized by Crip aggression, so they struck back and formed their own crew. That's when the line was drawn, red against blue, and suddenly those colors became life or death flags. And here's the chilling part. It wasn't just gang members paying the price. Regular civilians were getting caught in the crossfire for something as simple as wearing the wrong outfit. A red jacket in Crip territory? A blue cap in blood turf? That was enough to get you killed on sight. Even the world of music wasn't safe from this deadly code of colors.
18-year-old shot, his father and sister killed because the boy wore the wrong color hat. A drive-by shooting in Stockton, the victim wearing the wrong color.
Mob James once painted the perfect picture of just how dangerous it all was. He said one day he was cruising down Rosecrans in Central, deep inside Crip territory, behind the wheel of his Cadillac. He had DJ Quik blasting through the speakers, and that alone was enough to put a target on his back. Quik was a known blood, and in that split second, the music in his ride marked him as an enemy. Shots started flying simply because of the beat coming out of his car speakers. That's how extreme things had gotten. But even in the middle of all that non-stop bloodshed, there was a rare moment where peace didn't feel impossible. They called it the Watts Truce of 1992. And it went down just days before the Rodney King riots turned Los Angeles into a war zone. Rival gangs, bounty hunters, Grape Street, Watts, Hacienda Village, PJ Watts, all met at a Muslim mosque and signed a legit treaty. And this wasn't some casual street deal. They modeled it after the Israel-Egypt armistice. For a minute, it really looked like things were turning, and it worked, at least briefly. The very next year, gang-related deaths across LA dropped by 10%. That might not sound like much on paper, but in a city that hadn't seen a decline in over a decade, it was historic. They even threw unity picnics where rival sets came together, shared food, laughed, and showed the community a different side. Mothers finally breathed a little easier, and kids actually played outside without constant fear. For a fleeting moment, it felt like healing was possible. But the hope couldn't hold. The problems were bigger than colors or blocks.
An actor, Tupac Shakur, is dead at the age of 25, just about a week after sustaining 4 bullet wounds last Saturday night in Las Vegas.
Broken promises, poverty, police harassment, and decades of hate ate away at the fragile peace until it collapsed. It only took a few months for the fragile peace to collapse, and suddenly it was back to red versus blue. Bullets rained down, funerals stacked one after another, and soon the violence wasn't just claiming unknown street soldiers.
That breaking news overnight, Grammy-nominated rapper Nipsey Hussle shot and killed outside his own clothing store in Los Angeles.
It started taking hip-hop's biggest icons. Tupac Shakur's death in 1996 became the ultimate shockwave. His killing wasn't just a random act, it was tied directly into the same blood and Crip feud tearing Compton apart. Pac, Suge Knight, and Death Row were all connected to Mob Piru Bloods from Compton. Then came the infamous MGM Grand Fight with Orlando Anderson, a Southside Crip. That beatdown lit the fuse, and the retaliation came quick. A Vegas drive-by that ended Pac's life forever. And history repeated decades later. In 2019, Nipsey Hussle, one of the most respected voices in hip-hop and a proud Crip, was gunned down outside his own Marathon store.
Mom sent me to go spend some time with my dad when I was like maybe 4 years old. He taught me how to make a paper airplane. And he left.
Not by enemies, but by another Crip. His death shook the culture to its core, sparking yet another wave of peace talks and unity marches. The cycle kept proving the same point. The streets shifted, but the tug of war between peace and bloodshed never disappeared. And circling it back to DJ Quik, the world he was navigating wasn't just dangerous when he became famous. It had already been deadly from the very beginning. Quik was born on January 18, 1970, in Compton, California, right in the heart of gang territory on West Spruce Street. By the time he was coming up, Compton had already turned into a breeding ground for Bloods and Crips. The streets didn't give him much choice.
And mixing vinyl, you kind of had to have innate sense of rhythm to do that. I could put on 2 records and blend a 3rd record with it, you know what I'm saying, or overdub cassette with it and have 3 things playing at once.
He was pulled straight into the mix and ended up affiliating with the Treetop Piru set, also known as West Side Treetop Piru. Treetop Piru, a blood set holding down the north side of Compton, just below Rosecrans, became the world that shaped DJ Quik's identity. Living right there in their stronghold molded who he was, and those experiences eventually poured straight into his music. Life at home wasn't much softer either. Quik was the youngest of 10 kids, and his father dipped out early. He only ever saw him once in his entire life.
16 years old, going on 17, homeless. At this point, I'm just kind of going from apartment to apartment. I needed an address. That was the worst time of my life, actually.
That absence hit him deep, leaving a hole he carried for years. But even in the middle of all that pain, Quik discovered one thing that gave him light: music. For his 8th grade graduation, someone gifted him a turntable, and that single moment sparked a fire that never burned out. He started DJing, experimenting with sounds, spinning records, and before long, his passion transformed into his purpose. But just as things were taking shape, life struck him hard again. At 16, his family home got foreclosed. His mom moved away to Louisiana, but Quik refused to leave Compton. That choice left him homeless for almost 3 years. Nights on couches, nights in cars, nights with nowhere to go. But through all of it, music was the one thing keeping him alive. It was during this stretch that he claimed the name DJ Quik. And the spelling wasn't just clever, it was a statement. He dropped the C to make his blood ties clear. And the CK in Quik, that stood for Crip Killer. Normally flashing something like that could have gotten him smoked on sight. But Quik's talent was so undeniable, his reputation so solid, that even enemies were forced to respect him.
It was a curse and a blessing at the same time. I mean, they put us out there, but they didn't pay it.
The streets knew he was bringing something powerful to the table, and nobody could ignore it. By 1987, DJ Quik was no longer just some kid with a turntable. He was making serious noise in Compton. He hustled hard, pushing his own homemade mixtapes through the neighborhood, and one tape in particular, the Red Tape, turned into gold. It built him a loyal street following, and word spread fast. By the late 80s, all that grinding finally paid off when Profile Records came knocking in 1990 with a deal that officially launched his career. But here's where it gets messy. Eazy-E himself had been watching Quik too. He tried to snatch him up for Ruthless Records, waving around a $1 million advance to sweeten the deal. Imagine that, $1 million back then was life-changing, but the timing was bad. Quik had already locked in with Profile, and things got ugly fast. Profile even fired off a cease and desist to block Ruthless from pulling him away. Quik would later admit the Profile deal was both a blessing and a curse. Sure, it gave him his big break. But behind the scenes, the label constantly played with his money, shorting him, stalling payments, and forcing him to fight for cash he'd already earned. Still, none of that stopped him from leaving a mark. His debut album, Quik is the Name, dropped like a bomb. Tracks like Tonite and Born and Raised in Compton shot him up the charts, peaking at number 10 and eventually going platinum. But while his music career was climbing, Quik's deep gang ties and fiery temper weren't going anywhere. 1991 gave DJ Quik one of the wildest, most infamous performances of his entire career. The spot? The Event Center on East Colfax Avenue in Denver, a strip already crawling with crime, heavy gang presence, and the notorious Trey Crips holding it down. That night, the Crips rolled in deep, buying up tickets and flooding the venue. When Quik hit the stage, instead of brushing it off, he decided to match the energy head on.
The G ain't in you. And I slid the pencil across the bottom of it, and I got up and walked away from the table. I knew that was it.
While performing Tonite, he started throwing up blood signs right in their faces. Then he crossed the line even further, flipping one of his own lyrics, shouting, "F it, let's shoot some Crips." The crowd went ballistic. That's when things spiraled. Somebody from Quik's crew hurled 40-ounce bottles straight into the audience, cracking one Crip in the face and catching another innocent fan in the jaw. Quik, never one to back down, even poured his drink over gang members in the crowd like he was daring them to react. And they did, instantly. The entire venue exploded into chaos. Fists flying, bottles smashing, and Crips storming the stage. Quik and his crew had no choice but to sprint for their lives. 2 hours later, Denver police found him hiding out at his hotel in Stapleton. He got slapped with a misdemeanor assault charge, but the damage was already done. Quik had stamped his name in one of the craziest concert meltdowns the West Coast had ever seen. But the madness wasn't limited to the road. Back home, Quik was locked into one of the most legendary West Coast rap beefs, going head-to-head with MC8 from Compton's Most Wanted. That bad blood had roots all the way back to 1987 when Quik first dropped the Red Tape. On the track, Real Dough, he slipped in a line that sounded like a direct jab at CMW. At first, it wasn't even direct beef. Quik wasn't big enough yet. But as the Red Tape kept circulating, that little jab on Real Dough got noticed, and MC8 wasn't about to let it slide. By June 1990, Compton's Most Wanted dropped their debut album It's a Compton Thang, and track 7, Duck Sick, was a straight-up clap back at Quik. 8 basically warned him not to play hero for the Bloods by dissing Crips on wax. From that point forward, the feud was official, and the West Coast had another war brewing. The shots flew back and forth for years, but the true breaking point came with Quik's brutal diss track, Dull As Plus Sense. Quik didn't just fire at 8, he dismantled him with one of the coldest lines in rap beef history. "Tell me why you act so scary, giving your set a bad name with your misspelled name, 8. Should I continue? Yeah, you left out the G, cause G ain't in you." Even Quik admitted later that when he wrote that verse, he knew it was game over. The disrespect was surgical, and it cemented the beef in rap history. But the war didn't just stay in the booth, it spilled into the streets. At a death row after-party, tensions exploded between both camps, and fists turned to tragedy when Kelly Jamerson from the Rollin' 60s Crips lost his life in the chaos. By summer 1995, the feud was still boiling hot, and there was no sign of cooling down. Then came the infamous Source Awards on August 3, 1995, at the Paramount Theater in New York. The night was already legendary thanks to Suge Knight's fiery speech that sparked the East Coast versus West Coast war. But for Quik and 8, it was another battlefield. Quik stepped on stage and, with 8 sitting right there in the audience, performed Dollars Plus Cents straight to his face. Quik didn't stop with just Dollars Plus Cents, he twisted the knife even deeper. Before and after the track, he threw in extra disses, making sure everyone knew exactly who he was aiming at. And 8, he didn't clap back that night, not because he wasn't heated, but because the room was stacked against him. Suge Knight and the whole death row entourage were in the building, and 8 knew one wrong move could mean not walking out alive. But time has a strange way of flipping the script. After watching the rap world lose both Tupac and Biggie in the late 90s, even the hardest rivalries started to look small compared to the weight of that loss. Eventually, Quik and 8 buried the hatchet, and in one of the wildest full-circle moments in West Coast history, Quik linked up with Problem in 2017 for the collab album Rosecrans. Guess who showed not 1, but 2 tracks? MC 8 himself. Hearing them together on Central Avenue and Funny How Niggas Gon' Change Things shocked fans at first, but it also felt right. It was proof that even in a culture built on beef and bloodlines, time really can heal wounds. But what do you think? Did DJ Quik and MC 8's truce prove growth, or was it just business as usual? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives like this.